Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of So What You Saying. My name is Tom.
And I'm Sean.
Today we are going on the slightly more heavier end of the spectrum. Today we're going to be ranking all of Slayer's studio albums. Like Iron Maiden, both myself and Sean are very big Slayer fans, to the point where we even formed our own Slayer covers band called The Criminally Insane, or as some people like to call us, I Can't Believe It's Not Slayer. So
Good times, man. Good times.
that being said, we're going to try and be as impartial as possible when it comes to critiquing these albums. Okay, why don't we just get into it? So, Slayer's debut album, Show No Mercy. Overall, I think this is a great album. I like pretty much all the songs on this album. The production leaves a little bit to be desired, but I'm sure we can let it slide. It was their very first album. From what I gather, they didn't have a lot of money to work with when they recorded this album. Standout tracks for me has got to be Antichrist, Die by the Sword. I love the song Cryonics, which is a deep cut on this album. I also love the title track, Show No Mercy. And the song Black Magic is not only my favorite song from this album, but it's also one of my favorite Slayer songs. This album, you can kind of tell Slayer is still discovering what their sound is. They really wear their influences on their sleeve on this album. You can hear the Judas Priest influence. You can hear the Iron Maiden influence. You could tell the band were really into Venom at the time.
Yeah, I mean, as a debut album, it's a really good start. I think it's got that sort of raw '80s sound that a lot of the other sort of big four thrash bands had at this sort of time. I think, what was it, 1983 this album came out? So
1983, same year as Kill 'Em All.
there you go. So I mean, yeah, you could tell they had like a point to prove with this album. Yeah, I really enjoy it. I don't really care about the production on this because it's their first album, so I'll cut them a bit of slack for that. Really, similar song choices for me. Die by the Sword was one of the first Slayer songs I actually heard when I was getting into them. Really enjoyed that one, especially like the live version. I like the opener actually. Evil Has No Boundaries. I think that sort of gets things off with a massive punch in the face. So
That's a very good song. One of the only Slayer songs where they used gang vocals as well. They didn't really do many gang vocals after this
well,
album.
for the evil.
Yeah.
Yeah, good solid start. I would put it in great as well.
One little funny story about this album is when they were recording it, Dave Lombardo's had to record his cymbals separately from the drum track. I don't know why that was the case, but I think it was their producer, Brian Slagle, at the time. He sort of said, yeah, all the bands do that. So Lombardo would record his drum track, and then he'd go back and, hit the crashes and the China cymbals, at the correct points in the song. So glad we agree with that. Show No Mercy, great album. Before we move on to their second album, there's a glaring omission from this tier list ranking, and that's their EP, Haunting the Chapel. If it was here, I would put it in the great tier as well. I think that's an amazing EP. Chemical Warfare, great song. Haunting the Chapel, great song. It's just the perfect EP. It's exactly what you want to hear out of an EP.
Yeah, and Chemical Warfare is just an absolute classic as well, especially when it links to a song later on in the discography as well. It's Face Melter, and yeah, it kind of bridges the gap quite nicely between Show No Mercy and Hell Awaits.
Moving on to their second album, Hell Awaits. You may or may not agree with me, Sean. I think this is one of their best albums. It might be my favorite Slayer album. I'm torn between this album and another one that we'll talk about a little bit later on. I think this is an incredible album. I would like to put it in Masterpiece. I love every single song on this album. This is one of the most evil sounding albums I think I've ever heard in my life. Hell Awaits, amazing opener, followed by Kill Again. At Dawn They Sleep is my favorite Slayer song. Praise of Death is just balls to the wall from start to finish. Followed by Necrophiliac, another great song. Followed by Crypts of Eternity, which is probably Slayer's most progressive song. I think it's also their longest song. And the album ends with Hardening the Arteries. Nice little touch at the end. The outro of that song was the intro to Hell Awaits. The last album they did with Brian Slagle as producer. They would later go and work with Rick Rubin after this. Hell Awaits, masterpiece to me. I don't really have a bad thing to say about it.
This album has really grown on me over time. When I first heard it, I enjoyed it, but it took a while to sort of really appreciate it. But yeah, if I could sort of describe it, it's like if you could picture a horror movie but in musical form. For me, that's what Hell Awaits is. Amazing opener, Hell Awaits. I think that's probably is my. Oh no, I don't know. It's one of my favourite openers that
It
they've ever
is my
done.
favorite opener. It is my favorite opener. I think it's
Yeah,
a great way to open the album.
yeah. No, I agree. I was just thinking, and I was going to say it is, and then I remembered what the opener to the next album is. So, but yeah,
Yeah, okay.
but yeah, and like I say, at Dawn They Sleep, the breakdown section in that song is just nasty. And Tom's vocals, like you say, the real reverbs coming through on that.
I love the way in At Dawn They Sleep, that middle section where it dramatically slows down. Kill, 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 boom. And then it's just followed by chaos.
Chaos.
And
Yeah, exactly.
you could also tell they're really into Merciful Fate at the time as well.
Yeah,
This
big
album
time.
sounds like a hybrid between a Venom album and a Merciful Fate album.
For me, it almost sort of borders the death metal genre. Like you
Yeah.
can tell, even though they're in the sort of the thrash category, this one really takes like the sort of the thrash boundaries. And yeah, I know it's sort of a bit of a crossover sound to me. Yeah, I can't really disagree with Masterpiece because I think the step up in intensity from the first album, which we agreed is great, and it's like a sort of prototype of what they would go on to be. I think so. Yeah, I can't really disagree with you on that one. I'm happy to put it in Masterpiece.
Good. I'm glad we agree. Masterpiece.
Yeah.
Moving on to Slayer's third album, they followed up one masterpiece with another masterpiece. Raining Blood is considered one of the greatest heavy metal albums of all time. It really is hard to disagree with that. I think this is probably my favorite artwork of any album Slayer have released as well. The artwork itself is just so iconic. This album is 2 or 3 minutes shy of 30 minutes. It's a very, very balls to the wall album. Angel of Death, an amazing opener. Just an amazing song. It's like the perfect heavy metal song, followed by Piece by Piece, Necrophobic, Altar of Sacrifice, Jesus Saves, Postmortem, the song Raining Blood. I don't know what I can say about this album which hasn't already been said. It's another huge step up in production, really stripped back. The layers of reverb are gone. The guitars are really in your face. The drums are pounding and heavy. The lyrics are dark and twisted. Just an amazing album. It's a masterpiece. I don't really have anything. If I had one little nitpick to say, I'm not the biggest fan of the song Reborn, but outside of that, I think every single song on this album is a 10 out of 10, or at least very close to being a 10 out of 10, like a 9.5 out of 10. So this album for me is a masterpiece.
Angel of Death as an opener is just unbelievable, really. I think when I first heard this, I thought Tom Aray's scream was actually like Jeff on the guitar doing that. The way he reaches that high note is just like, holy shit, what's this? But like you say, it's got that iconic Slayer sound, and it's breakneck speed. They weren't wasting any bloody time with this album, were they? In my head canon, a bit like what you said about one of the songs on our previous video for Maiden. This kind of, even though it's not a concept album, it feels like a concept album to me. Like, you've got all the sort of evil, nasty kind of motifs going through. Like, obviously, Angel of Death is about Joseph Mengele.
There was someone in the higher ups that refused to release this album because of the song Angel of Death. They were happy with everything else, but they absolutely hated that song and they wanted it removed from the album. But I don't know how they got past that, but both Slay and Rubin stuck to their guns and they released that album. I mean, could you imagine this album without Angel of Death? The two songs that are so integral to this album are the opener and the closer, that being Angel of Death and Raining Blood. I think Raining Blood is the most listened to song on Spotify. So it just goes to show the sort of cultural reach that this album has. It goes beyond the heavy metal category. I've seen Slayer perform songs from this album on like mainstream late night talk shows in America. So this album is a very important part of pop culture. That's the sort of reach it has. Raining Blood, you go into masterpiece, and we wouldn't have it any other way. Moving on from Raining Blood, we have Scythe of Heaven.
So they kind of had a little bit of time after Raining Blood to either sort of carry on doing what they did before or try something a little bit different. And I think they did the latter with this album. Not to mention, standout highlights for me before we get into the meat and bones of the album. Dave Lombardo's drumming on this album is outrageous. Obviously you've got the iconic title track, South of Heaven, which, I never get bored of hearing and seeing live. It's always a fun one. I think Tom's vocals have stepped up a bit in terms of the actual, like, he kind of goes into a bit of singing in this album. So, while still maintaining that kind of sort of like visceral sound to his vocals. So that's good. Guitar's great on this. Some standout tracks to me, obviously you got South of Heaven, Silent Scream, the way that kind of just starts at breakneck pace from the word go is great. Mandatory Suicide, they're kind of finding their feet with the kind of mid-paced songs. The vocals are pretty chilling, especially towards the end when you've got that kind of running monologue from Tom Araya's point of view at the end about, mandatory suicide, massacre on the front line. He's almost speaking it, which I thought was quite a cool touch for that. But obviously, when it comes to live, he just screams the hell out of it. Nice closer. I think it's very eerie for a closer. And again, Tom sort of really gets that point across with the vocals in that one as well. Behind the Crooked Cross, another one I enjoy, another one that I enjoyed playing when we covered it as well. I think those that like Behind and Mandatory Suicide they're nice neighbours. I think they sound good next to each other. Ghost of War. So that has a nice little link into Chemical Warfare, as we sort of hinted at before. This is like the end of Chemical Warfare runs into the beginning of Ghost of War. So whenever they play those two live together, it's always special. One or two that I maybe don't listen to as much. So I'm going to go great, but I'll see what you say.
Before we carry on, I need to make that correction. I mixed good and average up. Just falls a little bit short of being a masterpiece. I think the first 6 songs on this album are all 10 out of 10 songs. Yeah. South of Heaven, Silent Scream, Live Undead. That's one of my favorite Slayer songs, by the way, Live Undead. I think that's such an underrated song. Yeah. Behind the Crooked Cross, Mandatory Suicide, and Ghost of War, another one of my favorite Slayer songs. But then I feel like the album dips in quality after Ghost of War. It's a very front-heavy album, if that makes sense. I can really take or leave, read between the lies. I'm not a big fan of Cleanse the Soul. I think Tom Araya once said in an interview that's his least favorite Slayer song. I could be wrong. And I'm not the biggest fan when bands do covers to fill up space on their album. Yeah. That's usually a sign that they've sort of run out of ideas. So let's just bung a cover on the album. So that's pretty much why I would keep it out of Masterpiece, due to that sort of lull 2/3 of the way into the album. I quite like the production. A lot of people think it's a little bit too dry. I personally think it really suits the songs they wrote on this album. I agree with you on Lombardo's drumming. His drumming on this album is just incredible. Those drum fills are just bonkers. One more thing I want to point out about this album, from this point onwards, Kerry King would not only record all the rhythm guitar tracks, he'd also record all the bass tracks as well. So the last album Tom recorded bass on was Raining Blood. But yeah, I agree with you. South of Heaven, great album. Doesn't quite make the cut for Masterpiece. Seasons in the Abyss, it's either my number 1 or my second favorite Slayer album. I'm torn between this and Hell Awaits. It can really depend on my mood of the day, which one takes the number 1 spot and which one takes the number 2 slot. I think this album has a little bit of everything that's great about Slayer. There's very fast songs, there's very slow, heavy songs, there's a ton of groove to some of the songs on this album as well. The lyrics, once again, are great. I'd like to really point out how good the guitar solos are on this album. I feel like on this album, Jeff and Kerry sat down and really thought about how to structure their solos on this album. Lombardo's drumming, once again, another standout. I really like the production on this album. Spirit in Black is probably my second favorite Slayer song. War Ensemble, great opener. Blood Red, Dead Skin Mask, which was a song I didn't like for a very long period of time, but it's become one of my favorite songs on this album. I know a lot of people might find that weird, but I was never a huge fan of that song. Skeletons of Society, Hallowed Point, I mean, what a song that is. And the way they close the album with Seasons in the Abyss, it's just perfect. Like Raining Blood and Hell Awaits, I don't really have a bad thing to say about this album. It belongs in Masterpiece. Like, say if somebody said, I want to get into Slayer, which album would you recommend I start with? I would say start with this one. Yeah,
I agree with you again. I think this is the perfect combination of the previous 2 albums. I think you've got the sort of raw intensity of Raining Blood with the kind of evolution of their sound and the drumming and Tom's vocals again with South of Heaven. So yeah, I mean, one of the best openers again, War Ensemble, and that's always a great live number as well. Spirit in Black, great tune. An underrated one in their back catalogue, I find. I think the more I've listened to it over time, the better it's become. Dead Skin Mask, like you were saying, funny enough, that's a same feeling that you just described. Is like, yeah, I thought it was all right, but I think compared to like the 4 songs that came before it in the album, it didn't really hit for me. But as time has gone on, sort of lyrically, it's just nasty, man. About Ed Gein, and I like my horror stuff, and I'm into the kind of, I'm fascinated by all the kind of like the old serial killer kind of stories from back in the day. Yeah, I can't think of a song that I don't really like on it. I mean, I don't listen to, probably Temptation, I would say, is probably the one I don't listen to as much as the others.
I still think it's a great song, though.
Yeah, exactly. And I like the way that they've Tom's vocals kind of pan left. Well, it's kind of like an echo, isn't it? Like,
yeah, that was a mistake.
Like,
that was a mistake in the studio, but they thought it sounded.
Accident.
Yeah, but they thought it sounded happy accident. So
yeah,
they thought it sounded great, so they kept it in that way.
I'm more than happy to put it in Masterpiece.
Good. I agree. Okay, moving on. This is where I think opinions may start to divide a little bit, if not between me and Sean. I'm sure they will with people who will watch this video. Divine Intervention. This is the first album they did with current drummer. I suppose I can say current drummer. Slayer pretty much come out. Slayer more or less come out of retirement, so I'll say current drummer, Paul Bostaph. Believe it or not, Sean, this is the very first Slayer album I ever listened to.
Oh, right, okay,
yeah. I had heard Seasons in the Abyss, and I had heard, I'm pretty certain it was Raining Blood, and a good friend that we used to go to college with, for whatever reason, he had this Slayer album, and he lent it to me, and I really didn't like it. I didn't like it at all, and for the longest time, I sort of just said, Divine Intervention, yeah, it's okay. I didn't really rate it at all, and I think this is a great album. I don't know what has happened, but I was just listening to it one day, and it just clicked with me. And I was like, oh my god, this is a really, really good album. The production's not good at all. This is not a very well-produced album. And Slayer have gone on record saying they hate the production. If there's one album they could go back and remaster, it'd be this one. They were bouncing from studio to studio, recording and mixing this album. Bostaph really did earn his place on this album. The intro to Killing Fields is just an incredible piece of drumming. That whole song is like, this is our new drummer. Doesn't quite make the cut for Masterpiece for me, but I would definitely put it in the great tier.
Yeah, man, I'm pretty much there with you. I was teetering on the edge with this one between good or great. As I was first getting into Slayer, so the first 2 albums that I sort of listened to the most when I first got into it were Raining Blood and one that's going to come shortly later on. And so I only had really those 2 to compare with before I went back and listened to the rest of the albums. So firstly, when I listened to it, I was like, yeah, it's all right. It's not bad. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say it's my favourite Slayer album at the time. Anyway, this was like 10, 15 years ago. But as I've said quite a lot on this video and on the last video, over time, getting older and just, your taste slightly adapt somewhat. I think this is a brilliant album. I think it's dark, it's nasty, it's edgy. Fictional reality, I think it's got a nice hook to it. Ditto Head is just balls to the wall, face melt.
Great song. Great song. The deep cuts on this album are really, really good. Sex, Murder, Art, Fictional Reality, like you said. 213, one of the creepiest Slayer songs.
That for me is what puts this into like the great tier for me. I just think those types of Slayer songs, they're few and far between, but when you hear them, it's like, oh, okay, that's something very different, but in a good way. Like the sort of the haunting nature of it. The song Divine Intervention, I think that's a nice self-titled number, and again, it just goes into that kind of like dark, twisted vein of them. But yeah, I rate it really well. I listened to it quite a lot recently.
You know what? Even though I think it's great, I could live with it being in the good tier if you really wanted to drop it down a peg.
No, I'm not like it really shouldn't be a great album, because I think it is a great album. So yeah, no, I'm happy for it to being great as well.
Divine Intervention, I think that might divide some opinion, but I'm interested to hear what other people have to say about that album. Moving on, we have an album that kind of stands out like a sore thumb because this is a covers album, Undisputed Attitude. So this album is full of punk covers. Slayer love punk, so they basically released an album covering a load of punk bands, verbal abuse, etc. I don't really like this album. In fact, I don't like it at all. Let me say some good things about it. The last song, Gemini, which is the only original Slayer song on this album, in
Yeah.
my opinion, is one of the most underrated songs they've ever released.
Mhm.
Really, really good song. I've got to rank this album. I would put it in the terrible category. I've listened to it a few times. I listened to it a bit in preparation for this video we're doing. My opinion hasn't changed on it. It's not very good. There are bands out there that have done way better cover albums than this one. This is not a good album. I would put it in terrible.
Yeah, I haven't really got much to add because I never really listened to it. To be honest with you, I don't really consider it a Slayer album. I know that sounds weird. Like, don't get me wrong, I've heard a couple of tracks over the years, and it's all right. I mean, most of them are about a minute, 2 minutes long. So, it is what it is. I never ever go, I'm going to listen to Slayer today. Let's put on Undisputed Attitude. So, yeah, apologies to all the Undisputed Attitude fans out there. They don't play badly or terribly, but in my opinion, it's the album that I listen to the least in their whole discography.
Okay, moving on, we have what is often considered the worst Slayer album. That is Diabolus In Musica. I'm probably going to get some hate for this. I think this is a bad album. I don't think it's terrible, though. There's quite a few songs on this album I enjoy. I think Bitter Peace is a great opener.
Yep.
I've got a real soft spot for Stain of Mind. I know a lot of Slayer fans recoil in horror when they hear that song, but I really
Me
like
being
it.
one of them.
I also think Perversions of Pain is a very underrated song.
Yeah.
And I also love the last song, Point, on this
Yeah.
album. I was listening to that on the way home from work today, and
Yeah.
I was thinking, what a way to end the album. That being said, I totally understand why people do not like this album. I get it. Even Slayer themselves don't like this album. I'm one of those people that kind of appreciates it when bands try something different to expand their sound a little bit.
Yeah.
There was clearly some pressure from the studio at the time because nu metal was the big thing at the time, and I think Jeff and Tom were a bit more open to trying out different things because Jeff wrote a lot of songs on this album,
Yeah.
whereas Kerry King, he kind of, I think in his own words, he fell asleep at the wheel. He wasn't really paying much attention. And then when this album came out and he gave it a proper listen, he was like, oh man, this is bad. This is not good.
What was I doing?
I'd like to put it in the bad tier. I don't really, I'm happy to argue that it shouldn't be in terrible, even though a lot of people would. But I enjoy like what, 4 out of 10 songs. So by that standard, it shouldn't go in terrible.
I think there's some weird stuff going on with the vocals in this album. Like, I know Tom's trying something different, but there's a lot of effects that he's used, or like the sort of like the mega sort of that kind of effect over his vocals.
He recorded with a handheld microphone.
Yeah,
He didn't record like in a booth. He actually recorded holding the microphone in like a big room. I think
yeah.
they were, like you said, they were trying out different things on this album. It's a
Techniques.
very experimental album for Slayer
Yeah.
standards.
Yeah, and I think partly is, I think they, like you say, they were trying to sort of kind of fit in with the phase at the time that it was going through. Kind of, there's a few sort of things on here that sound a bit more like Korn than Slayer, to be quite honest. Although I don't know, it's like not really a fan of that. I mean, like you say, Bitter Peace is a good opener. I think that's a proper traditional Slayer song. It's fast, it's in your face, straight from the word go. Stain of Mind, I think that's the song that I've listened to the most from this album, just because even before I listened to it, like the album in its entirety, Stain of Mind was one of those ones where, getting into people like, yeah, Stain of Mind, Stain of Mind. It was played at pubs and clubs that we went to around that time. So, I mean,
Yeah, remember that of all the random Slayer songs to have on the jukebox.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I thought they probably thought, well, if you can dance to a Slayer song, maybe it's this one. Who knows? You're going to be surprised about this, but I don't mind Desire as well. It kind of has a bit of...
Dude, I wasn't brave enough to say it, but you have. That is often considered Slayer's worst song. I strongly disagree. I think it's pretty good.
So do I. And we're going to get slated for that. But I think it's very Dead Skin Mask in a way. Like the lyrics.
I really like the chorus. I really like the chorus. Yeah.
Yeah, same. So I don't mind that song at all. Love to Hate, it's just a nothing song.
Yeah, there are some terrible songs on this album.
Yeah.
I think that there's another song called Screaming from the Sky or Screaming at the Sky. That's a terrible song.
I'm happy to put it in bad. I don't think it's like unlistenable, but yeah, bad, definitely.
Yeah, I'll put it. Yeah, we'll put it in bad, but it does kind of borderline on average with me. But we'll keep
Yeah,
it in
yeah,
bad for now.
yeah.
I don't think it's as bad. I've heard way worse albums than
Oh
this one.
yeah, yeah. No, I don't think it's like utter shite, shall we say?
Okay, many would consider this next album a return to form. This album came out, that being God Hates Us All.
Yeah.
This album came out when me and Sean were really diving deep into our heavy metal fandom. Slayer being one of those bands, along with Maiden, Metallica, Megadeth, etc.
When I was first getting into Slayer, there were two albums that basically I was sort of given access to, as it were, or just like promoted to listen to. That being Rain in Blood and this one, being as it was like the most recent one at the time that we were getting into it. I think, yeah, it's definitely a step up from Diabolus. There's no bones about that for me. You know, there's some iconic songs on here. Disciple, God Send Death, probably my favourite song on this album. It's also a very angry album, like really, really angry, which has gotten me through a lot of said times when I've needed to let off some steam, particularly songs like Exile, Payback to close it. You know, it's just, yeah, it's just vicious vocals on there. Then you get something like Seven Faces, which goes back to the kind of sort of creepiness that Slayer can do really well. It's between good and great for me because the production isn't very good. I don't think, at least, well, it just sounds a bit scratchy. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but yeah, it just seems a bit weaker compared to like the following albums. Creatively, I think it's probably one of the better albums from the 2000s from them for me. And yeah, and it had, as I say, it struck a chord with me when I was getting into Slayer in the first place. Yeah, see, because if I put it in great, then I'm saying it's going to be as good as Divine Intervention or South of Heaven, which I don't think it is. So I'm happy to put it in good if you are.
I really liked this album when I first heard it. I've sort of soured on it a little bit more over time. So I agree with you. I wouldn't put it in great. I would put it in the good category. Standout songs for me are Disciple, God Send Death, like you, my favorite song from the album. Exile's a great song. I also love Payback. And I also really like Seven Faces. That's in my opinion, the most underrated song on the album. The thing is with God Hates Us All, when the songs are good, they're really good.
Yeah.
But when they're bad, my God, they are some of the worst songs Slayer has ever written. Deviance is a awful song.
Oh God, I
Terrible,
forgot about
terrible
that.
song.
Yeah.
Really don't like Warzone either. That song is just the definition of filler. Bloodline, for whatever reason, they saw that as the single for this album.
Yeah.
One of my least favorite Slayer songs. I don't like that song. I don't really like that song at all. I'm not a huge fan of the production either. It's very loud and in your face, but not in a good way. Like, I get a headache listening to this album because it's one of those albums where everything is cranked up to 10. You know, it just ends up sounding like static noise after a while. I know a lot of people love that sort of production style. It's just a personal preference of mine. I don't really like it. I like it when different instruments can breathe, and it just feels like every instrument is fighting for space. It's definitely Slayer's angriest album. My God, this is an angry album. Tom Araya is screaming
Yeah.
throughout almost the entire album. But I agree with you, good album. I wouldn't consider it great, though, because I would take Show No Mercy, South of Heaven, and Divine Intervention over God Hates Us All. Okay, moving on, we have their next album, Christ Illusion. This is the return of Dave Lombardo, who had been absent from the band for about 10 years. He was gone for quite a while.
Yeah.
The hype for this album was crazy. You know, the original lineup was back together. There was a lot of talk and reminiscing over Raining Blood. There was this whole, are they going to release the album on the 6th of June 2006, 666 day? The song Cult was the first song they released as a taster for the album, which I think is a really strong song. So everybody was really excited for this album. They even recruited the guy who did the artwork for Raining Blood to do the artwork for this album. And to coin a phrase that you used in the Iron Maiden video, I Phantom Menace this album. I was telling myself that it was a really good album, and I think I was saying something crazy at one point. This is one of the best albums they've ever done. This is one of my least favorite Slayer albums. I don't like this album at all. There's like 2, maybe 3 songs at the most I enjoy on this album, Cult being one of them. I just thought it was so underwhelming. I was brutally disappointed. It didn't quite set in straight away, but after a couple of weeks, I was like, "Oh God, this isn't a good album." I've seen this album sort of bounce around on different tier rankings that I've watched. Some people really rate it highly. Some, like me, don't rate it at all. In my opinion, this album goes into the terrible category. I don't really listen to it, and when I do go back and listen to it, I'm quickly reminded why I don't listen to it that often. I'm really sorry to any fans of this album out there, but this goes in the terrible category for me.
Yeah, I think it's crap. Like, I tried my best. I really did. I went back and listened to it earlier. This is what I was saying to you before on Messenger, and I was like, I've got thoughts about it, and I thought so underwhelming. I think a lot of hype, like you said again, was going into this thing. This is going to be like this is going to be like Raining Blood Part 2 and all that. There was so much like of that kind of hyperbole going around it. No, it was just so, like you said, it was underwhelming. Kerry King, man, you got to stop with this whole anti-religion stuff. It's just getting boring by this point. God hates
Yeah,
us all,
yeah.
but
Even, I'm not like a deeply religious person, but even
yeah.
I was getting to the point where I was like, can't you write about something else?
The Eyes of the Insane. That was okay. I
That's
thought,
a good song. That's a really good
yeah,
music video for that song as well.
exactly. Yeah, and that was, when I was listening to it, I was just in the shops earlier on listening to it, and I was like, oh, all right, this sounds like something different. And I was like, you look up the writing credits. It's like Tom Araya and Jeff. I was like, yeah, doesn't surprise me. What else? I
But
mean,
Tom and Jeff did write Jihad, which is a song I despise.
do you know what? I don't as much. I used to hate that song, but I don't. I don't like the intro to it. I think it sounds a bit corny, but it's okay.
I don't know
Uh,
how that song keeps making it into their set list.
yeah,
I've seen Slayer around about 8 times,
yeah,
and almost every time I've seen them, they've played that song, and I'm like, oh
yeah.
God, where's the bathroom?
I can't give it any higher than bad personally. So if you want to put it in terrible, I'm not going to argue against it.
Sorry, Christ Illusion, you're going into the terrible tier. Moving on from Christ Illusion, we have World Painted Blood. I'm happy to say, at least in my opinion, Slayer really step it up in this album. This is a much better album than Christ Illusion.
Yeah,
Quite an important album. This is the last album Slayer recorded with Jeff Hanneman, and this is also the last album with the original lineup as well, because Lombardo was fired not long after Jeff's departure. I overall really rate this album. I think the production leaves a lot to be desired. They recruited Greg Fidelman,
yeah,
who is currently Metallica's producer or
mhm,
engineer, whatever you want to call him. And you can tell it's him because sonically this album sounds a lot like Death Magnetic.
yeah.
It's not quite as compressed as that album, but production wise, they do sound quite similar. I think the opener, World Painted Blood's a very good song. I love Unit 731, might be my favorite song on the album. Snuff is a great song. It has like this guitar harmony thing where they're double tracking solos in it. Beauty Through Order, I think, is an incredible song as well. Hate Worldwide, really good song. The album kind of dips a little bit after that. They've got songs like Human Strain and Americon, which is a pretty naff song in my opinion. I know you're not a fan of this song, Sean. I really rate Psychopathy Red. I think that's just a crazy song for 2.5 minutes. It's not a perfect album, but it's certainly not a bad album. I I think I listened to this album more than God Hates Us All, so I suppose I would probably put it in the good tier, but I'm open to it being shifted around a little bit, depending on what you have to say about it.
Yeah, I think this is a massive step up from Christ Illusion. I think they definitely do bring Jeff and Tom into the fore with the songwriting and the creativity. Back is definitely palatable with this album. Well Painted Blood, great opener. It's got that kind of weird intro, and you can hear like chanting in the background, and it's just nice sort of ethereal stuff to get going. Yeah, Unit 731, brilliant song. Nasty in terms of like the it kind of harks back to Angel of Death in terms of that era of history that they were talking about. Like,
Oh, the lyrics of this song are terrifying.
yeah,
Read them. They're brutal.
experimentation back in biochemical nastiness going on with that. So
the fact that's based on real life events is just
yeah,
terrifying. I love how Beauty Through Order sort of it does this. I love it when
yeah.
songs take you on a journey.
Oh
So
yeah,
it starts off slow, then it goes fast, then it completely drops
yeah,
back down to, you know,
yeah, yeah,
and then it picks
yeah,
back up again, then
yeah,
drops back again, and then there's just a bonkers solo section. And
yeah.
once again, Lombardo's drumming on this album. I think he was, when he went on that metal show, he said this is his favorite Slayer album.
Oh really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't agree with him, but
No.
from a performance point of view, his drumming on this
Yeah.
album is just amazing.
Going to Psychopathy Red. Yeah, I don't like dislike it. It's just yeah, it's just a song that's kind of there for me. You know what I mean? I mean, Tom's vocals on it are absolutely ridiculous, especially towards the end where he just keeps going higher and higher and higher and higher. Sort of a little hark back to his old style, but
Tom
yeah,
I read, Tom I read did these vocal takes where his voice clearly breaks, but they just kept
yeah,
it in anyway.
yeah,
But I think it
yeah,
sounds great.
yeah, no, yeah. I'm tempted to put it in good just because I think I know like I've listened to God Hates Us All more. I kind of enjoy that a bit more overall in terms of like the songs from the first half of the album
Mm,
anyway.
mm.
But I because it's such a step up from Christ Illusion, then yeah, I'm happy to put it in good as well.
The final album of Slayer's career, um,
Maybe.
maybe, you know,
Yeah, like they
the,
said they'd never come back out, and then they're back out of retirement. Oh, it's only one gig. Oh no, now they're touring. Oh,
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
it'll happen to work.
They've clearly been seeking, we've said this before, they've clearly been seeking advice from Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley of how to deal with a retirement. Just don't retire.
Yeah, yeah, just keep
Just
going.
keep
Just roll
going.
with it.
Yeah, yeah. Repentless, I think the opening song, as in like the title track, is a really good song. Great
Yeah,
way to open the album. I also love You Against You. That's a
yeah.
great song as well. I also quite like the slow song on this album. What's it called?
When the stillness comes.
When the Stillness Comes. That's it. Yeah, it was. I enjoy it so much. I forgot what it's called. I also think the production's really good. Probably the best Slayer have ever sounded on album. They got Terry Date to mix this album, who did
Right.
Pantera. So,
Yeah.
you know, very good track record there. I don't really have much else to add to it. It's not an album I really listen to that much. I gave it a couple of listens when it first came out, and then I didn't really go back and listen to it after that. Why did Kerry King not allow Gary Holt to contribute songs to this album? He's an amazing songwriter. He's written
Yeah.
incredible riffs, and
Probably
we
didn't want
would
to
have
be
been.
overshadowed.
I think the reason he gave was, you know, or, you know, the fans, you know, they've got a certain expectation to, you know, what Slayer should sound like. He didn't want to mess with that formula too much. Frankly, I wish he did. I think this would have given the album a little bit more nuance and a little bit more variety than what
Yeah.
we got, because this is pretty much a Kerry King solo album with Tom Araya singing on it. And they got Boss Staff back on drums as well. If we had a tier for forgettable, I'd put it in the forgettable category.
Well, funny, this is what I was going to say. Maybe this can be the one album that goes in average because listen to it back recently. Because again, I'd only like yourself. The first time I listened to it, I thought, yeah, it's all right. It's just kind of Slayer by numbers, really. Repentless is decent. Yeah, good open. I think they're still opening with that now. Back in their not retirement tour. I think going back to what you were saying, Tom, about Gary Holt, I think there's a little bit of influence in Take Control. It's got like a kind of Exodus-y like kind of riff in there. When the Stillness Comes, as we were talking about before, again, whenever they write a song like this, I appreciate it. I think just I like that kind of the moodiness of songs like these. But it's got that kind of 2-1-3 intro to it. It's got with the clean intro to it. I quite
I
like.
love how that song ends.
Yeah, it goes to sort of crushing mode after that. Vice is okay, I guess. I mean, it's got an interesting take on violence being the best drug, and then I don't know, I get a chuckle out of Tom going, "Let's get high," so I don't mind that one too much. Again, it just doesn't really break the mold. I mean, Slayer they've got their sound by this point, especially in this kind of the sort of the 2000s era. But I don't think it's any better than I think what they did before with Well Painted Blood. That's a much better album as far as I'm concerned. There's different bit more variation. Obviously, I can understand maybe why Kerry King didn't want to rock the boat too much because it is the first album that they recorded after Jeff's passing. So I think they, like you say, they wanted to probably just keep it simple in that respect. Gary Holt has been with them, what, God, how long now? At least 10 years. So maybe if they do another album, maybe he'll get a bit more creative control, not creative control, but a bit more creative input.
If you want to put it in average, I'm not going to argue with you.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
yeah, Repentless. I would personally put it in bad, but you've made your point. I can live with it being in average.
No, fair enough.
Funnily enough, I actually enjoy Kerry King's solo album more than I do this album. I've
Yeah.
gone back and listened to that the Kerry King solo album more than this one.
Yeah.
So hey, go figure. And there we have it. That's our album ranking for Slayer's studio albums. Do you agree with our picks? Would you shuffle any of the albums around? I'm sure you will. But whatever you have to say, you know, we're always interested in hearing other people's opinions, what they have to say. Drop your own rankings down in the comments section and give this video a like if you enjoyed the content. Thank you very much for watching. Sean, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, in fact, thank you for continuing this journey alongside us. I think this one's going to be a bit more of a. There's going to be a bit more discourse with this one. The Slayer fans are very passionate, as we know, and yeah, but I mean that's what it's all about. It's all about opinions. You know, we want to hear from you guys as well. So and yeah, thanks for everyone who's commented so far on the Iron Maiden one, and suggestions for other bands are also welcome. So, what are you saying, Tom?
What I'm saying is, Sean, everybody have a good day and listen to Slayer.
Listen to Slayer.